The story begins with people bustling all around. As our protagonist opens his eyes, he instinctively wonders why everything is so noisy and what exactly is going on. Suddenly he startles everyone when he lets out a loud scream after regaining consciousness. The people nearby immediately turn to look at him, while he himself is left confused, questioning what is happening and who these people are. More importantly, he knows that this is not his home, which leads him to wonder whether he is simply dreaming, or if he has been kidnapped. Just then, a sharp pain strikes his head, and along with it comes the memory of a mysterious letter. Our protagonist is Shaolin, a fresh graduate who has just finished school. Before finding a stable or serious job, he relied on power leveling in games to make a living. After achieving a successful victory in one of his games, he stretched and muttered that he had finally finished. While eating chips and browsing his phone, he recalled how his father used to scold him, questioning how he could have ended up with such a useless son. Determined to prove that he was not the worthless person others believed him to be, Shaolin moved out on his own. He wanted to show his parents that he wasn't useless. He simply hadn't found the field he excelled in yet. Not long after moving out, and much to his surprise, someone knocked on his door in the middle of the night. Less than 2 days since leaving home, Shaolin received a strange letter. As soon as he tore it open, a black mist surged out, instantly enveloping his entire body. Inside was an admission notice from Dawn Academy, congratulating him on being accepted as a preparatory freshman. After completing identity verification, he was forcibly teleported. Now Shaolin believes he has been kidnapped and brought to this strange place called Dawn Academy. He cannot stop questioning whether this is all some kind of prank. Just then, a man asks if he has finally woken up, commenting on Shaolin's bad luck and weak constitution, since he had been unconscious for over 3 hours after the teleportation. The man sarcastically asks if Shaolin came here just to hibernate. Like Shaolin, the other students are equally shocked. They immediately demand answers: who the man is, where they are, and why they were kidnapped. Some even threaten to call the police if they are not released. The man clicks his tongue in annoyance, unsheathes his sword, and suddenly a purple aura envelops both his weapon and his body. His eyes glow as he swings his sword toward a wall, the sheer force silencing everyone in the hall. He coldly questions the noise and orders them all to shut up, complaining that every batch of freshmen always includes idiots. He even mocks the recruitment department, wondering if they do nothing but eat all day while bringing in trash. Clutching his head in frustration, he decides to keep things brief, since too much class time has already been wasted. He introduces this place as Dawn Academy and informs them that they are Class 7 freshmen. He then introduces himself as their counselor, Chin Chuan. He explains that they are here because they are the chosen ones, and that they must undergo intense training to constantly improve themselves, eventually earning the qualification to enter the new world. The students gasp, some questioning what this new world is, while others openly doubt Qin Chuan's sanity. Ignoring their reactions, Qin Chuan states that within Dawn Academy, they can obtain power, wealth, authority, and even immortality. After finishing his introduction, he instructs everyone to put away their credentials as they begin the potential assessment. Shaolin silently observes, noting that there are around 200 people present. He reasons that this situation cannot simply be a normal kidnapping, yet he still cannot comprehend what this place truly is, or if he is even still on Earth. The term New World sounds like something out of an alien migration plan. As the assessment begins, Shaolin wonders if it works like character stats in a game. A system notification appears, announcing the completion of the first assessment. Qin Chuan declares that the man's total attribute value is only 24, calling it trash, before immediately moving on. The next student scores 32 points, which Qin Chuan considers slightly better. As the process continues, Qin Chuan grows increasingly irritated, noting that most of them are average, with only 1 or 2 having data worth acknowledging. Raising his voice, he declares that he will report this to the principal and demands that the recruitment department stop picking people from garbage dumps. When it is Shaolin's turn, the system begins beeping continuously. He becomes confused as to why his assessment is taking so long. While others only take 6 to 7 seconds, his process drags on for nearly a minute. Eventually, Qin Chuan stops the process midway, curious about Shaolin's data. Expecting a rare treasure due to the delay, he examines the results, only to be stunned. His eyes widen in disbelief, and his entire body trembles with anger as he announces that Shaolin's total attribute value is only 9. Shaolin's face darkens with embarrassment, while Qin Chuan covers his eyes and mutters in disbelief. He declares that this is the first time he has ever seen a single-digit attribute value, calling Shaolin a truly rare piece of trash. Shaolin, however, thinks to himself that he doesn't even care about being here. If Qin Chuan is so capable, he might as well send a piece of trash like him back immediately. As Shaolin walks away, Qin Chuan calls him a true loser. Those words trigger something within Shaolin, reminding him of how he has been labeled a loser his entire life. Anger surges through him as a faint purple glow flashes in his eyes. Clenching his fists, he questions whether he can ever escape that label, even in this place. Qin Chuan coldly remarks that with Shaolin's attributes, entering the test would be suicide, and giving him an identity nameplate would be a waste. However, Shaolin reacts quickly, snatching the nameplate from Qin Chuan's hand before he can stop him. Holding it tightly, Shaolin firmly declares that whether he is a loser or not cannot be decided by a single number. No matter what, he will try and face everything himself. Qin Chuan smirks, acknowledging Shaolin's determination, and says he will wait to see reality crush him. He mockingly warns him not to wet himself in fear during the test. At that moment, another student asks about the gifted student Qin Chuan mentioned earlier. Qinchuan explains that gifted students are those favored by fate, destined to be strong, and guaranteed survival in the new world. As for the rest, he advises them to focus on simply passing the entrance exam. Then a black-haired girl steps forward and asks whether Dawn Academy truly offers unimaginable power and wealth, and what price must be paid. Adjusting her glasses, she calmly awaits an answer. Qinchuan recognizes her as Gu Xiaoyu, the student with the highest initial attributes in the group, though lacking a special talent. He explains that in this academy, credits and redemption points serve as currency, which can be exchanged for anything. Gu Xiaoyu nods in understanding. Xiaolin observes her quietly, noting how someone so gentle possesses the highest attributes, and how even Qinchuan treats her with respect. Qinchuan then instructs everyone that to check their status, they only need to silently recite "check attributes." When Xiaolin does so, his nameplate beeps, and a system window appears, displaying his details: name, age, lifespan, and attributes. A warning states that every death will deduct 10 years from their lifespan, and once it reaches 0, they will die permanently. This revelation shocks everyone. Panic spreads as students realize the consequences, especially one who discovers he only has 9 years left, meaning a single death in the new world would end him completely. Just then, another notification appears for Xiaolin. The system detects an abnormal fluctuation and announces that a hidden talent has been unlocked. Xiaolin freezes in disbelief, unable to accept that someone like him could possess such a thing. He quickly notices that no one else is reacting, suggesting that only he can hear these notifications. The system completes its analysis and states that the talent's name and level are unknown, as no matching data exists. It further explains that Xiaolin's learning ability has been greatly enhanced. His passive effect increases learning efficiency for all abilities to 100%, while his active ability allows him to replicate any F-rank skill for 3 minutes. This replication can only be used once every 7 days, though it will improve as the talent evolves. Because there is no precedent for this talent, Xiaolin is granted the right to name it. After thinking briefly, he chooses a simple and direct name that reflects its function: academic genius. Moments later, the system evaluates the talent, and a surge of purple energy confirms its rank: SS class. Xiaolin looks around, realizing that no one, not even Qinchuan, noticed anything. With a faint smile, he understands that this hidden SS class talent may very well become his greatest trump card for survival in Dawn Academy. Just then, one student asks what exactly the lifespan means. He nervously says that he only has 9 years left, and if dying once deducts 10 years, does that mean he would instantly hit 0? He hurriedly asks if this is some kind of system bug. Qinchuan immediately smacks him on the head and calls him a pig brain. He confirms that the boy really only has 9 years left to live, and that once he dies, his lifespan will be completely deducted, resulting in permanent death. Qinchuan then asks mockingly if the boy thinks this is a loss, calling him stupid once again, and declares that everyone here has actually hit the jackpot. Qinchuan continues, explaining that outside, on Earth, people naturally lose a year of life every year, and if they encounter danger and die, they stay dead. But here, lifespan is a resource. It is currency. By completing missions and exchanging points, they can grow stronger and even earn back lost lifespan. He then asks if everyone understands. As the student clutches his head in pain, Qinchuan adds that Dawn Academy gives them a stepping stone to change their destiny. It offers power, knowledge, wealth, and even extended lifespan. He further explains that as long as they have enough credits and exchange points, eternal life is theoretically within reach. Gu Xiaoyu then asks whether these rules only apply within the academy, or if they are universal. Qinchuan replies that once they become students of Dawn Academy, this law automatically takes effect, and as long as they remain on Earth, it remains valid. He then raises his voice, declaring that all unnecessary talk is over, and that the entrance test will now begin. He orders everyone to stay where they are and not move. With a snap of his fingers, the system immediately begins a countdown for teleportation. As the countdown starts, everyone falls silent and remains still. Soon a surge of purple energy engulfs the hall, and all the students are teleported away. After they disappear, Qinchuan mutters that this batch of freshmen doesn't seem to have a single truly talented student, and it looks like he won't receive a good evaluation score this time. Clutching his head in frustration, he sighs that he was truly unlucky this time. Suddenly, a loud laugh echoes from behind him. A man in a black shirt calls out to him as Old Kin, and boasts that their Class 3 has produced 2 talented students this time, one ranked A and the other B. He proudly asks Qinchuan how his own class performed. Qinchuan sighs and replies that his class also has a genius with initial stats exceeding 40 points. However, the man casually throws an arm over Qinchuan's shoulder and says that high stats are useless because everything depends on talent. He adds that he heard Eagle Country had a double S-rank freshman last year. Qinchuan immediately brushes his hand off and states that such information was debunked long ago. Even the central database has no record of any double S-rank, which means such a talent does not exist in the world. He adds that even S-rank talents are already extremely rare. Meanwhile, deep inside a goblin nest where the test will take place, a foul and suffocating stench greets the students. Even Xiaolin struggles to endure the smell. A system notification suddenly appears, announcing the start of the entrance test. It displays their mandatory mission, informing them that they are currently deep inside a goblin nest and must escape the forest within 1 hour to reach a safe zone. In addition to the mandatory mission, there are optional objectives. The first is to kill 5 goblins, and the second is to kill the Goblin King. Completing the mandatory mission will reward them with 10 credits and 100 exchange points. Optional Mission 1 grants an additional 10 credits and 200 exchange points, while Optional Mission 2 offers 20 credits and 500 exchange points. Another notification appears, presenting a pre-student exclusive gift pack, which contains one random weapon. When the system announces that there will be no death penalty for this test, everyone cheers in relief, knowing their lifespan will not be reduced. Meanwhile, Shaolin quickly opens his gift pack and receives a novice staff, an F-rank weapon. According to the system, it can create energy balls but consumes mental power. Shaolin also unlocks the skill Basic Wand Mastery, currently at level 1, requiring 100 experience points to level up. Upon seeing the notifications about skills and experience, Shaolin immediately thinks of the games he used to play. Acting on instinct, he gathers black and purple energy into the wand and fires it toward a nearby mountain. After successfully dealing damage, he gains 2 experience points in Basic Wand Mastery. Smiling, he realizes that using the weapon increases his experience. He charges the wand again, thinking that with his hidden SS-class passive talent, his leveling speed should be far faster than others. However, a sharp pain suddenly strikes his head. Grabbing it, he realizes that his attributes are too low and his mana is limited. He cannot use magic repeatedly. At that moment, a loud laugh rings out from another student, who proudly announces that he has unlocked Basic Heavy Sword Mastery, gaining 1 experience point with each swing. Shaolin observes carefully and realizes that using the corresponding weapon unlocks its related skill. If simply swinging a weapon grants experience, then theoretically they could stay here and grind levels before completing the mission. However, Shaolin quickly dismisses that idea. Randomly swinging without purpose is meaningless. They must meet certain standards to gain experience points. For ordinary people, the energy consumption is significant, and the mission's time limit exists specifically to prevent them from staying in place to farm experience. Looking at his wand, Shaolin concludes that switching to a physical weapon would be more efficient for leveling. At that moment, Gu Xiaoyu approaches him and asks if he wants to exchange weapons. She admits that although she hasn't played games, she understands that magic weapons must come with a cost, whether mental power or mana, which is likely tied to intelligence. She suggests that the wand in Shaolin's hand would suit her better, while Shaolin seems like he needs more precision, making the wand less ideal for him. Shaolin asks if she is Gu Xiaoyue and introduces himself. She confirms it and asks if he is willing to trade. Shaolin immediately agrees, reminding her that the wand requires accuracy and telling her to aim carefully. After receiving a novice dagger, Shaolin instantly unlocks Basic Dagger Mastery. Holding the weapon, he feels that it is much more manageable than the wand. He then considers that to pass the test more efficiently, it would be better to form a team. Smiling, he asks Gu Xiaoyu if she would like to join him. However, a large man suddenly steps between them and also asks Gu Xiaoyu to join his group. Calling her a little beauty, he says he heard she has the highest stats in their class, and once again invites her to cooperate with him. He boasts that his strength, constitution, and agility all exceed 10 points, and claims that compared to Shaolin, she would be much safer with him. He confidently declares that if they team up, they will definitely pass the assessment. Gu Xiaoyu remains silent for a moment before turning away and calmly stating that she is not interested. Wang Dalin's expression darkens with anger. As other students laugh at him, he looks for someone to vent his frustration on, and his eyes land on Shaolin. Without hesitation, he shoves Shaolin and angrily demands to know why he is staring. He sneers, saying that just looking at trash with single-digit stats like Shaolin annoys him. He adds that Shaolin is nothing but a burden, and mocks him for pretending to analyze weapons, questioning whether he even understands them. Shaolin clenches his teeth and calmly responds that whether they pass the test depends on their own abilities. He suggests that instead of picking a fight here, Wang Dalin should save his stamina for the mission. Enraged, Wang Dalin grabs Shaolin by the collar and asks if he heard him correctly, declaring that he will now show Shaolin what real ability means. Unexpectedly, Shaolin smirks and says that it looks like Wang Dalin won't get the chance, because at that very moment, a goblin leaps from behind, launching a surprise attack straight at him. When Wang Dalin turns around, the goblin's claws slash across his face. He immediately starts cursing in anger, but the goblin doesn't give him time to recover and lunges at him again. Still furious, Wang Dalin swings his weapon and slices the goblin clean in half. After killing it, he scoffs and says he almost kicked the bucket just now. Pointing at Shaolin, he accuses him of standing there waiting to watch him make a fool of himself, boasting that a mere goblin is nothing to him. However, before he can finish speaking, he suddenly notices several pairs of sharp eyes staring from the grass. In the next moment, a swarm of goblins emerges. The students scream in fear and panic, and within seconds, the goblins launch a full assault. Some students are unable to react at all, and are quickly overwhelmed, falling one after another to the goblins. Meanwhile, as Shaolin fights, he realizes how real everything feels: the smell, the pain, the sensation of touch. Aside from the environment seeming like virtual data, everything else is completely real. He realizes he had been too naive. This is nothing like playing games. Ordinary people without experience are nothing more than lambs waiting to be slaughtered, even if they are holding weapons. Suddenly, one student notices that the goblins do not attack those who stay inside the cave, and shouts for everyone to retreat there. As the students rush inside, Shaolin thinks that for now the cave is safe, but only temporarily. The protection will last 30 minutes, and it will not remain safe forever. He forces himself to calm down and analyze the situation, knowing that he cannot simply sit and wait for death. After a moment, Shaolin begins swinging his weapon. When he receives experience points, he realizes that they are only granted for standard movements executed with sufficient force. His strength is only 2, and his constitution is 3, clearly at the very bottom. Because of this, every strike must count. He needs to familiarize himself with the weapon and gain as much experience as possible before the next battle begins. After some time, the cave's protection timer drops to just over 2 minutes. Panic spreads among the students. Some question whether the cave will soon become unsafe, while others claim that the mission is impossible. A few complain that ranged weapons cannot hit anything, especially with how fast the goblins move. While most are panicking, Gu Xiaoyue remains calm, sitting quietly. She then notices Xiaolin still practicing his swings. After a short moment, she walks over and tells him that doing nothing is meaningless. She explains that based on her calculations, reaching level 2 in a skill would normally take about an hour, and the mission time does not allow for shortcuts. Xiaolin stays silent, thinking to himself that Gu Xiaoyue is indeed smart. His own calculations match hers. Reaching level 2 should take around an hour. However, with his hidden talent, he is only one swing away from leveling up basic dagger mastery. He thanks her for the reminder, and explains that he is simply trying to get used to his weapon. He then asks if she has observed anything about the goblins. Gu Xiaoyu is surprised and asks how he knew she had been observing them. Xiaolin casually replies that it is like gaming. You need to read the guide before pulling mobs. Gu Xiaoyu responds that she doesn't play games, leaving Xiaolin briefly speechless. He then shares his own observations, stating that the goblins have weak attack and defense, likely at F rank standard. Their weak points are the head and the heart, and as long as one overcomes fear, fighting a goblin one-on-one is not particularly difficult. He adds that the mission itself isn't hard, people are simply too scared. Once they lose the courage to fight, they lose all chance of winning. Gu Xiaoyu then points out that only 2 minutes of protection remain, and says it's time to move out. They cannot just focus on running away. As Xiaolin and Gu Xiaoyu head toward the cave exit, Wang Delen suddenly blocks their path, and angrily demands to know where they think they're going. Once again he asks Gu Xiaoyu to join his group, claiming that with their stats, they can easily fight their way to the safe zone. He adds that bringing Xiaolin along will only get them killed. Gu Xiaoyu calmly responds that reaching the safe zone is not difficult. The real challenge and reward lie with the Goblin King. Wang Delen shouts back that the Goblin King is only an optional mission, and it hasn't even made a sound so far. He argues that they might not even survive the basics, yet she is already thinking about hidden objectives. Yuolen then speaks up, saying that if the mission exists, it proves it is not impossible. He adds that since the Goblin King has not appeared yet, there must be a trigger condition, possibly time, remaining survivors, or the number of goblins killed. Gu Xiaoyue nods and rules out time, reasoning that the academy wouldn't leave them with only a few minutes to fight a boss. She also dismisses the survivor count, since too few students remain already. That leaves the goblin kill count as the most likely trigger. Xiaolin agrees, suggesting that the boss will appear only after a certain percentage of goblins are eliminated. At that moment, a trembling girl holding a bow asks if they can just complete the mandatory mission instead. She questions why they even need to fight the boss, saying the goblins alone are already terrifying. Who knows how strong the Goblin King is? Xiaolin responds that while there is no penalty for failing this test, succeeding offers huge rewards. If they simply run away, they will miss out. He asks everyone if they think such risk-free opportunities to earn credits will come often after enrollment. Since there is a chance to gain more rewards, they should give it their all. The girl with the bow agrees, and another student shouts that since they won't truly die, they might as well take the risk. Someone else adds that they have no other choice anyway, as the cave is about to lose its protection. Wang Delen clicks his tongue and shoves Xiaolin aside, questioning whether they are really going to listen to someone as weak as him. He boasts that his initial stat value is 32, and claims they should follow someone capable of carrying them. Gu Xiaoyek scoffs and mockingly remarks that 32 is only slightly above average. Irritated, Wang Delen demands to know her stats. Adjusting her glasses, she calmly states that her initial value is 46, then asks if he can finally keep his loud and unpleasant mouth shut. Everyone falls silent, while Xiaolin is stunned. 46 is more than 5 times his own stats. Gu Xiaoyue then addresses the group, stating that anyone who wants to pass the assessment and earn extra rewards should follow her commands. Only by working together can they complete as many missions as possible. She assigns Wang Delen to the front line, using his high stats to draw the goblins' attention. Though annoyed, he has no choice but to agree. She then instructs those with ranged weapons to provide support from the rear and organizes the students into groups of 3, forming simple formations. They must cover each other and kill as many goblins as possible. Finally, she turns to Xiaolin and asks what role he will take. Xiaolin replies that he will act as a roaming attacker, harassing enemies and finishing off weakened goblins. In his mind, he knows his stats are too low for direct combat, so he must avoid head-on fights and rely on precision. Not long after they leave the cave, Wang Delen charges forward, attacking the goblins to draw their attention. Meanwhile, the students with ranged weapons rain arrows down upon them. Suddenly, a goblin attacks from behind, but Xiaolin swiftly moves in, slips behind it, and with a sharp glint in his eye, slashes its neck. A notification immediately confirms his kill. The girl he saved thanks him, but Xiaolin ignores it. In his mind, he simply did what was necessary, avoiding direct confrontation to conserve stamina while waiting for the perfect moment to strike. After that, Xiaolin successfully takes down 3 more goblins in quick succession. The other students are shocked. They know his stats are only single digits, yet he always strikes at the exact moment when the enemy is most vulnerable. In Wang Dalen's eyes, however, Xiaolin is just getting lucky, scavenging kills. But in Gu Xiaoyue's view, this is no coincidence. Xiaolin consistently avoids the goblins' line of sight, and even seems to predict their movements. At the same time, after gaining enough experience, Xiaolin's basic dagger mastery reaches level 2. He feels grateful that he once played immersive VR games obsessively for 2 months, otherwise he would never have developed such precise timing. A system notification then appears, announcing that he is the first freshman to reach a level 2 skill. As a reward, he is granted a free skill matching his abilities. Xiaolin unlocks Heavy Slash at level 1. A surge of energy surrounds him as another notification explains that the skill delivers a powerful strike after a brief charge, with its strength depending on his current strength stat. However, continuous use will rapidly drain stamina, and the system recommends at least a 1-minute interval between uses. Xiaolin is overjoyed. Not only has he leveled up his basic skill, but he has also gained a new one. Moreover, he is now just one goblin away from completing the first optional mission. Soon after, as a wounded goblin collapses nearby, Xiaolin quickly stabs it, finishing it off and receiving a notification that he has completed the mission. He feels a sense of accomplishment, but at the same time, Wang Dalen and the others begin to notice something strange. The goblins are slowly disappearing, breaking apart like pixels. Confused, Wang Dalen demands to know what is happening, but no one has an answer. Moments later, a system announcement appears. The goblin population has been reduced by 1/3, the hidden condition has been met, and the activation of the Goblin King has begun. Just then, a massive Goblin King towers before everyone. As its form fully materializes, it lets out a deafening roar, the shockwave making it feel as if their eardrums are about to burst. For a moment, everyone is frozen in disbelief. The Goblin King stands there, its body wrapped in a faint green aura. Xiaolin immediately realizes that this is the dungeon boss, especially now that all the other goblins have disappeared. One of the students, trembling in fear, asks if this is some kind of joke. The Goblin King's health bar stretches far longer than any of their lifespans, and he cannot comprehend how they are supposed to fight such a terrifying monster. Another student drops his weapon and prepares to run, declaring that he quits, and that the others can fight it themselves. Xiaolin quickly tells him not to run, but the man ignores him. As Xiaolin observes the Goblin King, he recalls a key trait of goblins: their field of vision is limited, but their sense of smell and hearing are extremely sharp. Just then, as the fleeing student shouts while running away, the Goblin King immediately turns toward him. Xiaolin realizes that this reckless action has completely drawn the boss's attention. Meanwhile, Wang Dalin, still burning with anger, shouts at everyone, asking what they are so afraid of. According to him, they have the numbers to overwhelm the Goblin King. Without hesitation, he charges forward and attacks. However, his loud presence instantly draws the Goblin King's focus. In a single motion, the boss counterattacks and slams Wang Dalin to the ground. The impact is devastating. Wang Dalin coughs up blood as his weapon slips from his hand. Within moments, his body begins to break apart into pixels and disappears entirely. Witnessing this, the remaining students are overwhelmed with terror. Screaming in panic, they scatter in all directions, unable to believe that even someone like Wang Dalin was defeated in a single strike. But before they can escape, the Goblin King relentlessly crushes them one by one. With each swing of its massive weapon, more students fall. The sheer force of its attacks sends bodies flying. One girl is thrown several meters away, and just as the Goblin King prepares to finish her off, a burst of purple energy strikes its arm, interrupting the attack. The hit causes the Goblin King's health bar to drop slightly. Gu Xiaoyu, however, frowns as she realizes she missed its head. She notes that attacking the limbs results in reduced damage, meaning they must strike its vital points to bring it down. In her mind, she recalls her original plan: have others hold the Goblin King in place while she and the ranged attackers deal damage from behind. If they had worked together, she believes they could have defeated it before her mental power ran out. But now, their formation has collapsed, and her plan was far too idealistic. Lost in thought, Gu Xiaoyu fails to notice the Goblin King preparing to attack her. Suddenly, Xiaolin shouts, calling her an idiot and telling her to run. At the same time, he dashes forward and strikes the Goblin King from behind, cutting through its hair and successfully drawing its attention away from her. The Goblin King turns and immediately attacks Xiaolin, but he narrowly dodges the blow. As he lands, Xiaolin realizes something important. The Goblin King prioritizes attacking the closest target. Thinking quickly, Xiaolin calls out to the girl hiding behind a tree. He tells her that all the other goblins are gone, so now they only need to face the boss. He urges her not to panic and instructs her to draw the Goblin King's attention from a distance, keeping space while harassing it to create openings. The girl hesitates but picks up her bow, saying she will try. Xiaolin then turns to Gu Xiaoyu and tells her to look for opportunities to chip away at the Goblin King's health, since her attacks have the highest damage output. The three of them begin coordinating their attacks. Arrows and energy blasts strike the Goblin King repeatedly, gradually lowering its health. At one point, the Goblin King even drops its weapon, and a sense of hope begins to rise. Their strategy seems to be working. Xiaolin urges them to keep going, but suddenly, the Goblin King roars again. Raising both hands high, it slams the ground with immense force. A violent shockwave erupts, sending debris and stones flying in all directions. The girl with the bow is struck in the stomach by a rock, and dies instantly. After the attack, only Xiaolin and Gu Xiaoyu remain standing. Gu Xiaoyu steadies herself and says that now it's just the two of them. She asks Xiaolin if they still have any chance of winning. Xiaolin asks her how much mental power she has left. Looking at her wand, Gu Xiaoyu replies that she can only fire 2 more energy blasts at most. Xiaolin nods and says that it's enough. She only needs to land 1 hit on the Goblin King's head, since headshots deal significantly higher damage. Gu Xiaoyu hesitates, doubting her accuracy. She points out that the Goblin King moves too quickly, making it nearly impossible to land a precise hit. Xiaolin, however, simply smiles and tells her that he will make it stop moving. At that moment, a faint glow flashes in Xiaolin's eyes as he activates his hidden talent. He scans the Goblin King, and a system notification appears. Skill detected, Shockwave. It is an F-rank ability that deals impact damage within a 5-meter radius and inflicts a 3-second stun effect. Without hesitation, Xiaolin charges toward the Goblin King. As he runs, memories flash through his mind, how his talent was once considered useless, how he was always labeled as trash. But now, after successfully copying the Goblin King's skill, he realizes that this is his moment. This time, it is his turn to stand at the center of the battlefield. As Xiaolin prepares to launch his attack, the Goblin King also begins charging another shockwave. Xiaolin quickly realizes that the Goblin King releases its shockwave by smashing its hands onto the ground, while the one he copied is triggered through a weapon strike. Because of the difference in height and motion, his own skill should activate faster. Without hesitation, Xiaolin rushes forward and strikes at the Goblin King's hands with his weapon before it can unleash its attack. He knows that since the shockwave is a skill, it can be interrupted. When their abilities collide, the Goblin King suddenly loses its balance. With his weapon embedded in the ground, Xiaolin confirms his assumption. He successfully cancelled the Goblin King's skill. However, his shockwave cannot be used continuously. Even with his hidden talent, it still has a 30-second cooldown. The Goblin King wastes no time and immediately counterattacks. Just before its strike lands, a burst of purple energy explodes against it. Gu Xiaoyue's attack connects, reducing its health once again. Despite this, Gu Xiaoyue warns that she cannot hold on much longer. She says she only has 1 shot left before she collapses. In her mind, she is shocked that Xiaolin managed to interrupt the Goblin King's skill. Given his extremely low stats, she cannot understand how he accomplished it. Suddenly, the Goblin King grabs a massive rock from behind and prepares to hurl it. Xiaolin realizes that he is too close to evade the attack. With no other choice, he sacrifices his left arm to avoid being killed instantly. The impact lands, and Gu Xiaoyu cries out in alarm. When the dust settles, Xiaolin is still standing, though his arm is gone. At that moment, a system notification appears, showing that his shockwave still has 10 seconds left before it finishes cooling down. But before the timer ends, the Goblin King begins preparing yet another shockwave. Xiaolin quickly analyzes the situation and realizes that the shockwave has limited range. If he gets close enough, it won't affect him. He slides forward toward the Goblin King, positioning himself directly beneath its center of gravity. The moment the cooldown ends, Xiaolin gathers all his remaining strength and drives his weapon into the ground, unleashing his shockwave. The stun effect activates, freezing the Goblin King in place for a brief moment. Xiaolin immediately shouts to Gu Xiaoyu that this is their chance. Without hesitation, she releases her final attack, aiming directly at the Goblin King's head. The strike lands perfectly, and its health bar finally drops to 0. A system notification appears. They have successfully slain the Goblin King and completed optional mission 2. At the same time, Xiaolin drops his weapon as his consciousness begins to fade. As he collapses, Gu Xiaoyu rushes toward him in panic. Before losing consciousness completely, Xiaolin thinks to himself that he only needs to reach the safe zone. But as his eyes close, he loses hope that he will be able to complete the main mission. Meanwhile, inside an office at Dawn Academy, a man asks if everyone has reviewed the results of the entrance test. As the Minister of Admissions, he proceeds to give a summary. This year they enrolled 1,360 students across 12 classes. The overall evaluations are as follows: 560 F-rank students, 450 D-rank, 200 C-rank, 83 B-rank, and 52 A-rank. The minister adds that a total of 15 students achieved S-rank evaluations. The counselors are stunned, knowing that reaching S-rank requires completing all missions and surviving. One of them remarks that this batch of freshmen is exceptionally fierce and asks if many talented individuals have appeared. The man in the black shirt proudly declares that his class alone produced 2 talented students. A blonde-haired woman adds that her class also has 2, though both are only B-rank. The minister confirms their statements and announces that there are 13 talented students in total this year, the highest quality batch in the past decade. He thanks everyone for their hard work. At the side, Qin Chuan mutters in frustration, thinking he must be unlucky, wondering if his class truly failed to produce a single talented student. The minister then calls out to him as Little Qin and reveals that although his class did not perform well overall, it set 2 school records. First, it is the first time in history that a single class produced 2 non-talented students who both achieved S-rank evaluations. Second, the class broke both the highest intelligence stat record and the lowest comprehensive stat record since the founding of Dawn Academy. The minister adds that what makes it even more remarkable is that these 2 completely opposite records came from the same class, which has already drawn the attention of the principal. Back at the testing grounds, the students are teleported out. Some celebrate, relieved to still be alive despite having been killed during the test. Xiaolin immediately checks his system, shocked to find that he successfully completed the main mission. As far as he remembers, he had already lost consciousness. He glances toward Gu Xiaoyu, wondering if she was the one who carried him to the safe zone after he fainted. Just then, the girl with the bow calls out his name and thanks him for saving her. She says that without Zhao Lin and Gu Xiaoyu, she would not have achieved an A rank evaluation. She admits that she is still too weak, since she ultimately died from the Goblin King's shockwave, and asks if they managed to defeat the boss. After Zhao Lin confirms it, she beams with excitement, saying she knew they could do it. However, Wang Delin suddenly snorts and dismisses it as nothing more than luck. He mocks Zhao Lin, saying that if he hadn't clung to Gu Xiaoyu, someone with such trash stats would have died hundreds of times over. At that moment, Gu Xiaoyu walks over and calls out to Zhao Lin. She calmly says that she wants to speak with him alone. The two of them immediately move to an empty area. Zhao Lin smiles and thanks Gu Xiaoyu for helping him reach the safe zone after he lost consciousness. However, Gu Xiaoyu calmly replies that it was merely a mutually beneficial decision to maximize her rewards. She adds that without Zhao Lin interrupting the Goblin King's skill and creating an opening, she would not have been able to land the final blow. Hearing this, Zhao Lin realizes just how clearly and logically Gu Xiaoyu analyzes everything. Gu Xiaoyu then continues, saying that with Zhao Lin's stat value, it should have been theoretically impossible for him to interrupt a boss's skill. She acknowledges that he must have his own secrets, but she has no intention of prying. Instead, she simply tells him that if anyone asks about it, she will keep it a secret for him. Zhao Lin lets out a small sigh and thanks her again. Holding her nameplate, Gu Xiaoyu mentions that she discovered the smart brain system embedded within it has a communication function. She suggests that they add each other as friends, so it will be easier to stay in contact later. Zhao Lin immediately agrees and asks how to access it. Gu Xiaoyu explains that he only needs to silently recite the words "smart brain" to open the interface. As they follow her instructions, a system panel appears, displaying their personal information, including credits and exchange points. Gu Xiaoyu asks for Zhao Lin's student ID and sends him a friend request, which he promptly accepts. Shortly after, Qin Chuan shouts for everyone to listen. He orders all students who received an F-rank evaluation in the entrance test to assemble at the entrance. The rest are instructed to open their smart brain map navigation and head to the central playground. Noticing Zhao Lin and Gu Xiaoyu standing quietly in a corner, Qin Chuan calls out to Gu Xiaoyu. Meanwhile, Zhao Lin opens his smart brain map and begins searching for the route to the playground. As he walks, he can't help but wonder why Qin Chuan specifically called Gu Xiaoyu. He suspects it might be related to the S-rank evaluation. After some time, they arrive at the school's central playground. Zhao Lin notices that there are far more people than he expected. However, he also finds himself wondering, if so many people disappeared at once, wouldn't it cause some kind of disturbance back on Earth? Just then Gu Xiaoyu approaches him again. Before Zhao Lin can even speak, she quickly says that she didn't reveal anything she shouldn't have. But before their conversation can continue, a man suddenly shouts at the new students to make way. Another man angrily orders the freshmen to stand in their class formations and stop crowding together. Meanwhile, a man with blue hair walks up to the podium and introduces himself as the president of the Academy's student council. He announces that the principal has been delayed for some reason and will arrive shortly. In the meantime, he begins to welcome the new students on behalf of the Academy. But before he can finish, a thunderous roar echoes through the sky, sending shockwaves across the area. Panic spreads instantly as a gigantic dragon descends from above. Zhao Lin is stunned, unable to believe that he is seeing a real dragon. As it roars again, a powerful pressure freezes everyone in place, making it impossible to even move a finger. Gu Xiaoyu, trembling, quickly realizes that this is a form of instinctive, physiological fear that forces their bodies into paralysis. As the dragon lands, an old man with white hair is seen riding on its back. He calmly apologizes for being late, explaining that he was delayed by matters on the way. This old man is none other than the principal of Dawn Academy. The blue-haired student council president remarks that the principal's entrance is a bit too grand for the freshmen. The principal immediately becomes irritated and asks if he thinks he rode the giant lizard just to show off. In an annoyed tone, he explains that he rushed back from another place and had no time, so he had no choice but to use this big lizard as transportation. However, he complains that it started acting wild as soon as it arrived in this world, and even dared to scare his students. He adds that if it misbehaves again, he will skin it alive and turn it into a sofa. Meanwhile, Zhao Lin stares at the old man, realizing that this is the principal, the one person who might have the authority to detect his hidden SS-rank talent. The principal then tells the student council president that he has already reviewed the entrance test results for this batch of freshmen, and overall, their talents are quite good. As he speaks, his sharp gaze briefly lands on Zhao Lin. Then, using an amplification spell, the principal addresses everyone. He says there is no need to introduce himself, as he knows that what the students care about right now is not his name. He acknowledges that many of them were brought here under confusing or even unpleasant circumstances, and that they are likely feeling dissatisfied. Suddenly, he points toward the Minister of Admissions and says that if anyone is unhappy, they should go find him, since it is all the admissions department's doing, especially their habit of delivering admission letters at ungodly hours. He even states that he will establish new rules so that admissions must be conducted during the daytime from now on, adding that disturbing people in the middle of the night is simply bad practice. Once the students begin to calm down, the principal says that the jokes are enough. He declares that he will now answer the two biggest questions on everyone's mind: who they are, and what they are meant to do. He tells them to listen carefully, addressing them as children from the old world. He reveals that they are colonists. The principal explains that they are now connected to planet Norma, also known as the New World. The sole purpose of Dawn Academy is to cultivate outstanding pioneer colonists. Norma is the world they will soon head to, fight for, and ultimately claim as their own territory. The principal announces that step by step, their ordinary lives have already ended the moment they tore open their admission letters. From this day forward, among these new students may rise generals who will command legions and expand territories. Perhaps great magisters will emerge, individuals who pursue truth and wield the very laws of nature. Some may even become leaders who will establish the rules on the new land of Norma. He continues, saying that strength, knowledge, power, and even eternal life, all the treasures of the new world, will open their doors to each and every one of them. Finally, he declares a new rule. Under the old system, freshmen were strictly forbidden from setting foot in the new world. However, starting with their batch, the top 3 students in the university term comprehensive exam will gain the qualification to enter the new world early. This announcement shocks the student council president, who immediately steps forward and warns that this concerns the safety of the freshmen, urging the principal to reconsider. But with a single sharp glance, the president is instantly silenced, his body trembling as he apologizes. With that, the principal calmly states that his speech ends here. After some time, Shaolin reflects on the president's reaction, finding it unusually extreme. He cannot help but wonder if there is something problematic about the new rule. Still, he quickly reminds himself that his priority now is to make full use of the academy's resources to strengthen himself. Just then, someone calls out his name and asks him to stay behind for a moment. Turning around, Shaolin sees Qinchuan. Addressing him as instructor, Shaolin asks what he needs. Qinchuan sighs and explains that according to the rules, the student with the best performance in the entrance test becomes the class monitor. However, since Gu Xiaoyu declined the position, it now defaults to Shaolin. He adds that being class monitor comes with extra credits, resource quotas, and certain privileges. After appointing him, Qinchuan remarks that these benefits are essentially lifesavers for someone like Shaolin, whom he still considers dead last trash. He further explains that the position will be re-evaluated after the comprehensive exam in 3 months, and by then Shaolin likely won't even have a chance to keep it. As Qinchuan walks away, he tells Shaolin that the smart brain system will send him additional manuals, and he should read them carefully. Left alone, Shaolin wonders what kind of privileges come with being a class monitor. Meanwhile, upon arriving at the student dormitory, Shaolin is greeted by a rather indifferent receptionist. She lazily informs him that the doors lock at 7 in the evening, and reopen at 6 in the morning, and that staying out overnight will result in a deduction of credits. However, after checking Shaolin's information, her expression suddenly changes. Realizing that he is a class monitor, her attitude immediately becomes warm and respectful. She praises him enthusiastically, but Shaolin simply explains that he is only acting as class monitor and was forced into the position. Still, the receptionist insists that he should not be modest, saying that anyone who becomes a class monitor is no ordinary person. She even offers to personally guide him through collecting supplies and selecting his room. Shaolin is stunned by how quickly her attitude shifted after learning his position. A few moments later, she hands him his school uniform, explaining that uniform colors are divided by grade. Sophomores like her wear blue, while freshmen wear green. She then shows him his room, explaining that it is an exclusive single room reserved for the acting class monitor, while ordinary freshmen are assigned shared rooms. She also gives him a new identity nameplate, explaining that it is used for door access, purchases, and course sign-ins, so he must not lose it. Before leaving, she introduces herself as Zhang Tingting and suggests that they add each other as friends through the smart brain system. She offers to help him anytime if he has questions about studying or life in the academy. Shaolin thanks her, and as she waves goodbye, she reminds him to choose his courses carefully. After she leaves, Shaolin reflects on how Zhang Tingting became noticeably more enthusiastic once she learned he was the class monitor. He realizes this must be connected to the privileges Qinchuan mentioned earlier. He concludes that class hierarchy is very pronounced in this academy, and everything revolves around strength. With that in mind, he decides to focus on solving his course selection first. Closing his eyes, Shaolin opens the course selection interface. When he sees the list, he is overwhelmed by the sheer number of options. However, he understands that compulsory courses are mandatory, and he must also choose 1 basic combat course and 3 secondary stat courses. Although the choices are numerous, he knows his hidden talent gives him a unique advantage. He recognizes that his low stats are his greatest weakness, so he must improve them as quickly and efficiently as possible. His hidden talent's passive effect, enhanced learning efficiency, is his greatest strength, and he cannot afford to waste it. First, he selects basic swordsmanship as his combat course, since it is easy to learn and highly versatile. For his secondary courses, he chooses taijutsu to improve survivability, and basic meditation to strengthen his mental power and focus. After a moment of thought, he ultimately decides to enroll in as many available courses as possible, believing that in this place, strength determines everything. The next day, at the basic swordsmanship training ground, Shaolin begins practicing early to gain experience points and level up his skill. He quickly realizes that unlike a dagger, the power of a longsword strike comes from the waist rather than the wrist. As long as he masters the key techniques, his movements can become faster and more efficient. With continuous strikes against the training dummy, Shaolin soon reaches level 3 in basic swordsmanship. At the same time, his strength stat increases from 2 to 3. He notes that reaching level 2 took him about half an hour, while advancing to level 3 took an hour, still twice as fast as others. Just as he expected, skill progression directly enhances his base attributes. However, exhaustion soon catches up with him. He collapses onto the ground, breathing heavily, saying he can't continue. His arms feel like they are about to fall off. At that moment, a woman arrives and coldly comments that this batch of freshmen is even weaker than she expected, yet they still dare to enroll in her class. She is Chen Na, a third-year student serving as the substitute instructor for basic swordsmanship. She declares that in her class, anyone who fails to reach level 3 proficiency in basic swordsmanship should not even think about passing. Some students immediately complain, saying that if they had known, they would never have chosen this course, calling Chen Na a true devil instructor. One trembling student adds that even reaching level 2 requires swinging a sword non-stop for 3 to 4 hours, and they are not superhuman. How could level 3 be possible? At that moment, Shaolin calls out to instructor Chen Na and calmly states that he has already reached level 3 proficiency. He adds that according to his course schedule, his next class, basic meditation, is about to begin, and asks if he may leave early to attend it. Chen Na glances at him and questions whether he is serious. On the very first day, he already wants to skip 2 hours of her class. She asks if he is telling the truth about reaching level 3 in basic swordsmanship. Shaolin calmly confirms that he is. However, Chen Na seemed to harbor some hostility toward him, and she coldly said that so he must be Shaolin, the lucky guy with single-digit stats who supposedly leeched off his teammates to get an S-rank evaluation in the entrance test. She added that if Shaolin wanted to skip class, he should at least come up with a more decent excuse. In her mind, Chen Na simply could not believe that Shaolin had reached level 3 in basic swordsmanship on the very first day of class. To her, it was obvious that he was trying to fool her. Shaolin calmly replied that the data panel could prove it, and if she didn't believe him, she could simply pull it up and check. Chen Na smiled mockingly and asked if he really thought he could fool her with just a data panel. Without another word, Chen Na slammed her sword into the ground. A warning system notification immediately appeared, stating that substitute teacher Chen Na had applied to activate high-level teaching permissions. In an instant, an all-system training simulation arena was deployed, and the system prompted Shaolin to prepare himself. As Shaolin stood there in shock, digital skeletons began appearing all around him. Chen Na stated that rather than relying on boring data, it was better to directly observe actual combat ability. Once the simulation arena fully materialized, she explained that this space was constructed by the Academy at an enormous cost, stripping away some of the underlying laws of the normal world to create the ultimate training environment. She added that although Shaolin would not truly die here, he should remember that all sensations would feel 100% real. Then, as she summoned her skeleton army, Chen Na remarked that opening this simulation arena consumed a massive amount of exchange points, and she had paid a heavy price just to test his abilities. As the skeleton army charged toward Shaolin, Chen Na declared that since he claimed to have reached level 3 in basic swordsmanship, he should prove it in actual combat. Sitting on a conjured throne, she added that the strength of her skeleton army was roughly equivalent to the goblins from the novice exam. As long as Shaolin could clear this dungeon, she would allow him to leave class early, not just today, but in the future as well. A system notification then appeared, stating that they were currently inside an undead dungeon. Shaolin's first objective was to survive for 40 minutes, while his second objective was to eliminate 20 skeleton soldiers. Completing either objective would count as clearing the dungeon. Sweat rolled down Shaolin's face as he struggled to process the situation. He couldn't believe that Chen Na had actually opened an entire dungeon just to verify a freshman's level. In his mind, he was certain of one thing: this woman was completely unhinged. As he prepared to fight, Shaolin quickly analyzed his options. There were 2 ways to clear the dungeon: either stall for time or defeat every skeleton in the arena. The moment he struck his first skeleton, he made his decision: he would eliminate them all. As the skeletons rushed him, Shaolin observed that targeting their weak points required an average of 2 strikes per enemy. With 20 skeletons in total, that meant he needed to deliver at least 40 precise strikes. Chen Na, watching from her throne, was surprised by his choice. She had expected Shaolin to panic, apologize, and beg her to end the test. Instead, he charged straight into the fight. As the battle continued, Chen Na began to notice something unexpected. Shaolin's footwork, his application of force, and even the angles of his strikes were all quite refined. His movements were sharp, and his judgment was precise. She clicked her tongue, realizing that he was far better than those idiots who simply swung their weapons blindly. The only real flaw was his abysmal base stats. As Shaolin gasped for breath, already feeling exhaustion creeping in, Chen Na found herself wondering if he had deliberately enrolled in both swordsmanship and meditation courses just to compensate for his weaknesses. As the fight dragged on, Chen Na muttered to herself that for someone with such terrible stats, Shaolin managing 13 solo kills was already nothing short of a miracle. But at that moment, a skeleton struck from behind him. Chen Na immediately stood up, expecting that this would finally force Shaolin to face reality and give up. However, as Shaolin glanced at the skeleton behind him, his eyes sharpened. Activating the heavy slash skill, he swung his blade in a wide arc, cutting down 3 skeletons at once. With only 4 remaining, Chen Na was completely stunned. She couldn't believe that Shaolin had actually used the heavy slash skill. Her mind raced as she wondered how someone like him could possibly possess such an ability. Meanwhile, Shaolin continued his assault, cutting down the remaining skeletons one by one, until he had successfully defeated all 20 enemies, clearing the dungeon. As he stood there, breathing heavily, Chen Na remained silent, watching him intently. After a moment, Shaolin told her that he had completed her requirement, but the moment he finished speaking, his body gave out. He collapsed right in front of her, losing consciousness from sheer exhaustion. Chen Na stayed silent, her thoughts in turmoil. She couldn't help but wonder what exactly was special about Xiaolin. For a freshman to achieve both S rank and A rank evaluations in the entrance exam, it was clearly not just luck. Meanwhile, in the student council office, a girl with green hair handed over the files of freshmen who had received S rank and A rank evaluations to the council president. As he casually told her to leave them on the table, she added that there was something in the class schedules he should take a look at. The president immediately asked if there was a problem. The green-haired girl simply replied that one freshman's course selection was extremely bizarre. She then told him to take a look at the schedule of a student named Xiaolin, because he had selected every available course. This revelation left the president completely shocked. Meanwhile, in the Dawn Academy infirmary, Chen Na's voice could be heard shouting as she insisted that she did not intentionally push Xiaolin to this state, asking how she was supposed to know that the academy needed him for something when she was simply conducting her lesson. The student council president calmly replied that this was not the first time she had treated a freshman this way. Chen Na immediately snapped back, calling him shorty, and demanded to know if he had a problem with her teaching methods. The president sighed and explained that he didn't mean it like that, only that the students had just enrolled, so there was no need to be so extreme. However, Chen Na firmly argued that it was precisely because they were freshmen that she needed to be stricter, adding that being lenient with them now would only be cruel in the long run. After that, both she and the president fell silent. As his vision cleared, he saw the president and instructor Chen Na standing nearby. He immediately sat up and asked if he was in the infirmary. The president confirmed it, reassuring him that the academy's medical facilities were fully equipped, so he had nothing to worry about. He went on to explain that unlike a normal dungeon, exiting the holographic simulation arena does not reset consumed stamina and mental power. He had heard that Xiaolin collapsed due to overexertion and asked how he was feeling now. Xiaolin replied that he felt much better, and the president nodded, saying that he would fully recover after some rest. Then, the president asked Chen Na to leave the infirmary, saying he needed to speak with Xiaolin alone. Chen Na immediately protested, demanding to know why she had to leave, but the president didn't respond. Frustrated, she bit her lip and turned to walk out. However, just before exiting, she suddenly stopped and looked back at Xiaolin. Pointing at him, she declared that she was not someone who went back on her word, and that his early leave privilege was officially approved. As she resumed walking, she added that Xiaolin shouldn't blame her for not warning him. Those who try to cultivate both magic and martial arts rarely end well. With that, she told him he was on his own, then slammed the door behind her. Xiaolin smiled faintly, thinking to himself that Chen Na wasn't quite the terrifying female T-Rex everyone made her out to be. After she left, the president turned serious and said they should get down to business. He asked Xiaolin if he had read the freshman handbook, pointing out that it clearly advised against taking too many courses at once. He explained that swordsmanship, movement techniques, and taijutsu belong to the physical system, while meditation, spells, and perception belong to the magic system, two entirely different growth paths. He continued, explaining that while dual cultivation of magic and martial arts does offer advantages in the early stages, allowing one to handle a wider range of combat situations, as studies deepen, each system branches into countless specialized paths. By the sophomore or junior years, maintaining both would require 3, 6, or even 7 times the effort and time compared to focusing on just one path. Xiaolin calmly responded that he already understood this. He explained that if courses were like a tree, then the further one progressed, the more branches would appear, splitting into finer and more complex paths. While he acknowledged that dual cultivation demanded far greater effort, he still wanted to try. Deep down, he was confident that with the help of his hidden talent's passive ability, he could manage it. The president fell silent after hearing his answer. At that moment, he received a message from the principal. After reading it, he looked at Xiaolin and said that since the principal had already approved his course selection, he wouldn't object further. Before leaving, the president added that Xiaolin's schedule would need to be optimized and adjusted, and that the revised version would be sent to him by the next morning at the latest. He then told Xiaolin to get a good rest for the day. Once the president left, Xiaolin couldn't help but feel uneasy. He wondered how the principal's message had arrived at such a precise moment, almost as if he had been watching him the entire time. He questioned whether it was because of his SS rank talent, or something else. Meanwhile, later that evening in the principal's office, a voice suddenly asked why the principal looked so troubled. A girl with white hair and red eyes materialized. It was revealed that she was the Dawn Academy's central main control system. She asked what had happened, and suggested that he tell her. Perhaps it would even amuse her. Ignoring her question, the principal remarked that the system seemed to have become obsessed with Blue Star's anime culture recently. The system casually replied that her current appearance was quite popular on Blue Star, and perhaps it could help the academy recruit more freshmen. The principal frowned and reminded her that she was the academy's central smart brain, and only a select few individuals with proper authorization could even know of her existence, something she shouldn't forget. The system pouted, saying that even after over 100 years, the principal was still as boring as ever. Then she abruptly changed the topic, asking again why he seemed so troubled, despite the high quality of this year's freshmen. She even pointed out that there was a double S-rank talent among them, and questioned why he wasn't pleased. The principal explained that the average total attribute value for a normal person was around 10 points, while the academy's admission standard required at least 20. However, Xiaolin's total attribute value was only 9, making him by all accounts an extremely ordinary individual. The system asked what the issue was, suggesting that perhaps the admissions department had simply made a mistake and stumbled upon a genius by chance, which should be considered a good thing, but the principal shook his head and said that this was precisely the problem. When he tried to access Xiaolin's records earlier, he discovered that there was absolutely no admission record for him in the system at all. The principal added that although a total of 1,360 students were enrolled this year, the system only contained 1,359 admission letters with clear records in the central database. Since the founding of Dawn Academy, such a discrepancy had never occurred. As the main control program, he insisted that the system should know exactly what was going on. The system responded calmly, stating that a total of 1,360 admission letters had indeed been issued this year, and that there was absolutely no mistake. Hearing this, the principal immediately requested that the system pull up Xiaolin's admission letter for him to review. However, the system replied that while she would have liked to cooperate, the principal did not have the required permission to view that particular letter. This stunned the principal. He frowned and asked what she meant. After all, it was only an admission letter, and even he, as the principal, was being denied access. The system admitted that she was equally surprised by this situation. A brief silence followed before the principal let out a sigh. He said that he understood and decided to drop the matter for now. Then, using the highest authority available to him, he instructed to back up and encrypt all freshman admission letters for this year, except those locked by special permissions. He asked whether there would be any issue with that. The system confirmed that there would be no problem, and asked him to wait while she processed the request. Within moments, she completed the encryption, securing 1,359 operable admission letters and transferring them as encrypted files to the principal. She explained that from now on, only the principal and those with higher authority would have the right to view or modify them. As for the one file protected by special permissions, it could not be encrypted and remained under its original maximum level protection. She then asked whether the principal intended to keep the identity of the missing admission letter's owner hidden. The principal confirmed this and explained that he would be returning to the new world the following day. After his departure, he did not want too many unrelated individuals interfering with Xiaolin's development. He then told the system that he would leave the academy's affairs in her care and asked her to pay special attention to the situation. The system agreed. The next day, in the cafeteria, Zhang Tingting was visibly shocked upon learning that the student who had collapsed after just one class the previous day, causing even the student council president to get involved, was none other than Xiaolin. Xiaolin confirmed it casually, though he couldn't help but wonder if news of his collapse had already spread throughout the academy. Zhang Tingting sighed and told him that he should consider himself unlucky, as Senior Chen Na was notoriously terrifying. Xiaolin smiled faintly and admitted that Chen Na was indeed quite intimidating. He then asked whether only teachers had the authority to open the holographic simulation arena. Zhang Tingting shook her head and asked if he hadn't checked the privileges granted to class monitors yet. She explained that these privileges included viewing basic information about class members, managing class groups, and approving applications for the use of the holographic simulation arena. She added that class monitors themselves could directly submit applications to use the simulation arena without needing approval from others. When Xiaolin asked where to submit such an application, Zhang Tingting pointed out that under the Special tab, there should be an option for applying to use the student mode holographic simulation arena. Once approved by the Academy's smart brain, the entrance could be opened. Xiaolin quickly found the option and immediately submitted an application. Zhang Tingting remarked that since he was only a freshman, it would most likely be rejected. However, before she could finish speaking, Xiaolin casually mentioned that his application had already been approved. This caused Zhang Tingting to spit out her drink in shock. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. Back in her time, even class monitors had to wait 3 full weeks for approval. Instant approval like this was unheard of. She explained that the holographic simulation arena was typically used by sophomores, and opening it required at least 500 exchange points. These points would only be refunded upon successfully clearing the simulation. If he failed, the points would be completely lost. Xiaolin immediately calculated that he currently had only 800 exchange points. That meant he could not afford to fail even once. He recalled the words of the principal, Qin Chuan, and Wang Dalin, and understood that he needed to grow stronger as quickly as possible. He also remembered that the strongest student in Class 7 was Gu Xiaoyu, with Wang Dalin close behind. If Wang Dalin were to become class monitor, he would undoubtedly prevent Xiaolin from using the simulation arena in the future. No matter what, Xiaolin knew he had to increase his strength before the next evaluation. After chatting for a while longer, Xiaolin said goodbye to Zhang Tingting and left. Watching him go, Zhang Tingting couldn't help but think that Xiaolin was incredibly hardworking, just as expected from someone capable of becoming acting class monitor. Meanwhile, in the physical fitness classroom, a bespectacled male student questioned whether it was true that their class monitor had such poor stats. He turned to Wang Dalin and asked if their instructor had gone mad, because the situation was simply unbelievable. This student was Lang Ziyu, a freshman from Class 6. Wang Dalin angrily smashed a bottle of water and cursed Qin Chuan, questioning what he had been thinking. He added that he had already asked around and learned that many instructors were repeat freshmen who had failed to advance to sophomore year. In his opinion, Qin Chuan's judgment was only suitable for trash like Xiaolin. He continued, saying that Xiaolin was still training alone even after class, calling him pretentious. He also mentioned that Gu Xiaoyu had dared to look down on him, but he would make her regret it sooner or later. Liang Ziyu then suggested that instead of waiting for the evaluation 3 months later, they should teach Xiaolin a lesson right now. When Wang Dalin asked what he meant, Liang Ziyu explained that he knew a sophomore from the disciplinary department. Since violating school rules resulted in point deductions, they could use that to deal with Xiaolin immediately. Meanwhile, Shaolin continued training on a treadmill, working to improve his basic physical fitness. As he finished his runs, he noticed that it's already almost 7 in the evening. Calculating the time, he realized it would take about 10 minutes to walk back to the dormitory, just enough to make curfew. He reflected that with consistent daily training, he could probably raise his physical fitness to level 2 within a week. But just as he reached for the door to leave, Shaolin froze in shock. He realized that the door had been locked from the outside. Shaolin tried opening the door several times, hoping it wasn't jammed, until he finally realized that it actually locked from the outside. Annoyance quickly took over as he blamed his fellow students for carelessly shutting the door without even checking if anyone was still inside. He covered his face and let out a frustrated sigh, fully aware that it was almost curfew, and that he had no choice but to spend the night in the gym. Just then, a sudden click echoed throughout the training area, sending a chill down his spine. He turned cautiously, only to pause and then let out an awkward laugh at himself, realizing he had been startled by the power being cut off across the building. Even so, the thought lingered in his mind that the school never explained why electricity had to be shut down at night. Meanwhile, outside the building, a man questioned his companion about a report regarding a freshman acting class monitor who had already violated the rules and was wandering around after curfew. The man was Chen Yu, a second-year student from Class 1, and a member of the disciplinary department, currently serving as the head of the second years. His companion confirmed the report and explained that Leng Ziwei from freshman Class 6 had personally provided the information, making it reliable, and added that a freshman class monitor openly violating curfew rules should be dealt with severely as a warning to others. Chen Yu agreed, noting that with the principal away and the student president too busy to handle minor matters, it was up to the disciplinary department to maintain order without mistakes. He emphasized that as the acting head of the freshmen, he would tolerate no negligence when it came to discipline. The man beside him, Han Sen, a second year from Class B and also a member of the disciplinary department, expressed his approval, and after some time stated that they had arrived at the training ground and that he would go inside to patrol while Chen Yu agreed. In Han Sen's mind, Liang Jie was responsible for gathering evidence of rule violations among freshmen, while he himself was tasked with enforcing discipline, and as he unlocked the door with his key, he could not help but think that Shaolin, having just become acting class monitor, likely had a considerable number of exchange points, making this a perfect opportunity to gain something. However, the moment he stepped inside, he froze in shock and quickly scanned the area, confusion evident as he tried to locate Shaolin. Chen Yu immediately noticed something was off and asked about it, and Han Sen responded that he thought he had heard movement, as if someone had been hiding there, but now there was no one in sight. Unbeknownst to them, Shaolin was pressed tightly behind the door, holding his breath. Han Sen found the situation strange, as it did not match what he had expected upon entering, but Chen Yu calmly reasoned that since the door had been locked from the outside earlier, it would have been impossible for anyone to be inside, suggesting that Han Sen had simply misheard. Though hesitant, Han Sen accepted the explanation and suggested that they continue patrolling elsewhere, yet inwardly he remained frustrated, unable to shake the feeling that something was wrong, and wondering where Shaolin could have gone. At that very moment, Shaolin seized the opportunity to slip out unnoticed. Later, as he moved through the forest, he reflected on how close he had come to being caught, fully aware that freshmen were forbidden from going out at night, and that being discovered would cost him valuable points. Still, the timing felt far too coincidental, as he had just been locked inside the training ground when the disciplinary department had arrived almost immediately to patrol the area, leading him to question whether someone was deliberately targeting him, or if he was simply overthinking. His thoughts were abruptly interrupted when he looked up and saw 2 moons hanging in the night sky, causing his eyes to widen in disbelief, and he recalled that an instructor had once explained that the academy was modeled after the normal world, where 2 moons also existed, making the sight feel surreal and almost magical. As he continued walking deeper into the forest, Shaolin realized that returning to the training ground was no longer an option, and that his priority now was to find a place to hide for the night. Suddenly, a terrifying snort echoed through the air, and fear gripped him as a massive dragon opened its glowing eyes and fixed its gaze directly on him. He immediately recognized it as the dragon from the entrance ceremony, and as it spread its wings and rose to its full height like a towering structure, its gaze burned with intensity. Panic surged through Shaolin, driving him to run as fast as he could, and after some time he glanced back, wondering whether the dragon was still chasing him, hoping desperately that it had not caught up as the thought of becoming its midnight prey unsettled him deeply. At that moment, he noticed a large house standing in the middle of the forest, and without hesitation he rushed toward it, believing that whatever lay inside had to be safer than remaining outside. As he pushed open the gate, he reassured himself that the dragon would not follow him in, but what he saw next caused him to freeze in shock. In front of him stood a strangely colored chicken with glowing red eyes, and nearby were enormous cabbages so large that he questioned whether they could still even be called cabbages. He also noticed a glowing fruit emitting a sweet fragrance, which made him wonder whether everything in that place was edible. When his gaze returned to the chicken, he could not help but think how plump and appetizing it looked, and the thought of beggar's chicken crossed his mind, but as if sensing his intention, the chicken suddenly grew hostile, letting out a sharp cluck as it locked its gaze onto him before lunging forward and spewing flames. Shaolin barely managed to dodge, cursing under his breath as he realized the absurdity of the situation, having thought of roasting the chicken only to nearly be roasted himself. The chicken launched another attack, but before it could strike, a hand suddenly seized its neck with crushing force, stopping it instantly, and Shaolin, still shaken, turned toward the man who had intervened. The man regarded him calmly, Quickly assessing the situation and noting that Shaolin had failed to remain in his dormitory during curfew, had trespassed onto his property, and had even attempted to steal his chicken, which now hung limply in his grip, nearly lifeless. The two fell silent for a moment until Shaolin finally asked who the man was. The man clicked his tongue, then introduced himself as Song Junlong, the minister of the logistics department. He added that even if Shaolin didn't recognize him, barging into his territory like this took some nerve. With an annoyed expression, he asked if Shaolin was a freshman, remarking that this year's batch was really something, breaking curfew and violating school rules just 2 days after the term began. He also complained that Shaolin had frightened his beloved chicken, and demanded to know how he planned to compensate for it. Shaolin immediately apologized, explaining that he had only stumbled in by mistake while trying to escape the giant dragon outside, and that he had no intention of breaking any rules. He then recounted everything that had happened, how he had been locked inside the training room, how 2 people from the disciplinary department suddenly appeared to unlock it, and how he took the opportunity to slip away from them. He described how he fled into the forest, only to encounter the terrifying giant dragon, which chased him all the way here to Song Junlong's place. So that's what happened, Song Junlong said, then waved it off, adding that Shaolin didn't need to worry because the giant lizard wouldn't attack him. After all, he looked so weak that it wouldn't even be interested. Shaolin froze when he heard the dragon being referred to as a giant lizard. Song Junlong then explained that being locked in the training room was a common trick used by those brats from the disciplinary department. Shaolin asked if that meant someone had deliberately set him up. Song Junlong instead pointed out a likely motive: exchange points. He explained that exchange points were the Academy's hard currency, used to purchase equipment, activate the simulation arena, and trade for rare resources from the New World, all of which required a large amount of points. He added that those people in the disciplinary department loved to play entrapment games, setting students up to break rules before stepping in to settle things privately. Exchange points determined whether a student could advance to the next grade and enter the New World, so if Shaolin didn't want his points deducted, he would have to obediently hand over a few hundred points as a fine. Shaolin thought to himself that their methods were truly despicable. The only person he had any conflict with was Wang Dalin, and he found it hard to believe that Wang Dalin would go as far as collaborating with the disciplinary department just to get revenge. Song Junlong addressed Shaolin as Junior, his expression turning serious as he pointed out that staying out all night and trespassing into the logistics department already counted as 2 violations, which would cost quite a number of points combined. He asked Shaolin what he intended to do about it. At that moment, Shaolin heard footsteps approaching from outside. Song Junlong remarked that it seemed the disciplinary department was determined to catch Shaolin, noting that they rarely inspected the logistics department before. He then asked whether he should open the door and let them in so Shaolin could obediently accept his punishment. Shaolin replied that since Senior Junlong had told him so much, and even exposed the disciplinary department's tricks, meaning it was unlikely to watch him make a fool himself, Song Junlong smirked and called him clever, saying he hadn't wasted his words for nothing. He then suddenly asked if Shaolin knew how to cook. Caught off guard, Shaolin hesitated and said he only knew a little. In truth, he had merely watched a few cooking tutorials while scrolling through videos and had never actually tried cooking himself. Song Junlong smiled and said that as long as he could cook at all, it would be fine since his standards weren't high. He added that he would handle the people outside and ensure Shaolin wouldn't lose a single point, but in exchange, Shaolin would have to do him a favor. Song Junlong explained that he had been craving beggar's chicken for a long time and wanted Shaolin to use his beloved chicken to make the dish. Shaolin was stunned and asked if he was serious, but Song Junlong simply said that Shaolin was already trapped here anyway, so he had 2 choices: open the door, go out, accept punishment, and lose points, or stay and cook beggar's chicken for him, and he would smooth everything over. Shaolin quickly chose the second option with a forced smile. However, Song Junlong made it clear that Shaolin was volunteering of his own free will, and that he wasn't being forced in any way. Shaolin agreed immediately, though deep down he couldn't shake a bad feeling. Song Junlong then instructed him to hide inside the room and remain silent while he dealt with the people outside. Shaolin hurried into the house, thanking him repeatedly. When Song Junlong opened the door, he was greeted by Chen Yu and Han Sen. He greeted them casually, calling Chen Yu the superstar of the disciplinary department, and asking why they were out patrolling in the middle of the night. He also joked about whether they had come to freeload a meal. Chen Yu adjusted his glasses and explained that while on patrol, they noticed the principal's beloved pet behaving strangely. Concerned that someone had trespassed and caused trouble, they came to investigate. He added a remark about Song Junlong still wasting time on useless things late at night. Ignoring the jab, Song Junlong asked whether they had found the reason for the giant lizard's unusual behavior, and questioned why they had time to meddle in his affairs when they hadn't even handled their own responsibilities properly. This irritated Han Sen, who immediately stated that the logistics department was under the academy's jurisdiction, and that the disciplinary department had the authority to inspect any area for rule violations. He added that they suspected a freshman of staying out all night, and that Song Junlong had no right to obstruct them. Song Junlong dismissed him outright, saying he was speaking to Chen Yu, and questioning how a mere lackey like Han Sen dared to interrupt. As he turned away, he added that everyone knew what the disciplinary department did behind the scenes, and warned that if they continued to bother him, he would report their trespassing directly to the principal. His words angered Han Sen, but Chen Yu stopped him. In response, Chen Yu mocked Song Junlong, saying the only thing he knew how to do was use the principal's authority to pressure others. He pointed out that everyone in Dawn Academy knew Song Junlong's comprehensive strength rating wasn't even C rank. He added that if it weren't for the principal's personal appointment, Song Junlong wouldn't even qualify to enter the second year, let alone become a minister. Chen Yu sneered, calling him a nepotism hire whose strength didn't match his position, and told him not to lecture the disciplinary department on rules. As Shaolin secretly listened, he realized that Chen Yu seemed particularly hostile towards Song Junlong. At the same time, he couldn't believe that someone with less than C-rank strength could hold such an important position through the principal's personal appointment. This left him wondering, just who exactly was Song Junlong?